The frigid wind howled through the dilapidated walls of the old orphanage, sweeping away the remnants of laughter that once filled the air. Dust danced in the shafts of pale sunlight that filtered through cracked windows, illuminating the peeling paint and rotting wood of the structure. It was a place that held the echoes of countless dreams and unfulfilled promises. For Melissa Hastings, the memories of her childhood within these crumbling walls were bittersweet, a mixture of longing and sorrow. This was where she had spent her formative years, a child of the system, shaped by the very confines that now threatened to swallow the building whole. Melissa was a single mother, struggling between the demands of raising her 9-year-old son, Lucas, and working 2 jobs to make ends meet. At 32, her life was an endless cycle of exhaustion and hope that one day, things would get better, that she could provide a stable home and a brighter future for Lucas. She had just finished her shift at the diner, the fluorescent lights flickering above her as she wiped the last table, her hands aching from the day's work. Yet, as she stepped outside into the chilly evening, her heart felt heavy, not from fatigue, but from the weight of her childhood memories. Determined to reclaim a part of her past, Melissa made the impulsive decision to purchase the orphanage, now abandoned, for a mere fraction of its potential worth. It was a dilapidated building, haunted by memories and shadows, yet it was the only place that had ever felt like home. The price tag was ridiculous, a mere $50,000, a sum she could scrape together through loans and her savings. She envisioned transforming it into a sanctuary for children like her, those who had been left behind by a system that often failed them. But she had no idea that the real cost of her decision would be far greater than the price of the building. As she drove past the rusting sign that read Windsor Orphanage, Melissa felt a pang of nostalgia mixed with trepidation. The structure loomed ahead, its silhouette stark against the fading twilight. What had once been a vibrant home was now a decaying shell, both alluring and horrifying. She could almost hear the whispers of the children who had played in the yard, their laughter replaced by the melancholic creaks of the aged wood. She thought of Lucas, who deserved to feel the warmth of community and safety, something she had never truly experienced. But little did she know, lurking in the shadows of her newfound dream was Nathaniel Blake, a man with his own agenda. Nathaniel was a real estate mogul, ruthless and unyielding, with schemes that often left people in his wake. He had his eyes set on Windsor Orphanage, not to restore it, but to demolish it and replace it with luxury apartments. The city was on the brink of a redevelopment boom, and Nathaniel was determined to capitalize on every opportunity. He had plans for the orphanage that would strip it of its history, turning it into a mere profit-generating machine, devoid of the lives that had once thrived within its walls. The conflict was set. A woman fighting to recreate a sense of belonging versus a man intent on exploiting the past for financial gain. Each had their own vision for the orphanage, but only one could prevail. As construction crews began to encroach upon the property, Melissa stood at the entrance of the orphanage, clutching the keys tightly in her palm. She watched in disbelief as workmen began to set up barriers and signs proclaiming, "Future home of Windsor Heights Apartments." Anger surged within her. How could they? This place was a sanctuary, a bastion of hope, and they wanted to tear it down for profit? Fumbling through her thoughts, Melissa's mind raced. She had to act quickly. She remembered the whispers of the town's residents, rumors of Nathaniel's shady dealings, his knack for getting what he wanted at any cost. He was known for silencing anyone who stood in his way, often through intimidation and deceit. Yet there was more at stake here than just bricks and mortar. There was history, memories interwoven with the very fabric of her childhood. But with her limited resources, what could she do? Time was not on her side, and Nathaniel would not hesitate to exploit her vulnerability. There was no doubt he would try to crush her dreams of turning this place into a haven for children. The thought filled her with dread. She could not let fear dictate her actions. She had to dig deeper, find allies, rally support from the community that had once called this place home. As night fell, the orphanage took on an ominous aura, the shadows stretching long and dark across the ground. Melissa stood alone, determined but aware of the formidable challenge she faced. The wind whispered ominous secrets through the broken windows, carrying the weight of the past into the present. Would she be able to save the orphanage, or was it already too late? Just then, a familiar figure emerged from the darkness, a face she had not seen in years. It was Clara Thompson, a former resident of the orphanage, now a local journalist. Caught off guard, Melissa felt a rush of emotions as they locked eyes. Clara had been investigating the redevelopment plans, uncovering the truth behind Nathaniel's intentions. "Melissa," Clara said, her voice steady, "I've been looking for you. We need to talk about what's happening here." The stakes had just risen, and the battle for Windsor Orphanage had begun. What secrets lay buried within its walls? Would the past help them prevail against Nathaniel Blake's ruthless ambition? The answers were waiting to be uncovered, and Melissa Hastings was determined to unearth them, no matter the cost. As Melissa Hastings stood at the entrance of Windsor Orphanage, her heart raced with a blend of nostalgia and trepidation. The peeling paint, the broken windows, each detail whispered stories of a childhood spent within these crumbling walls. Yet now, this place was more than just a relic of her past. It was her battleground against Nathaniel Blake. The ruthless developer had intentions that threatened not only the history of the orphanage but the very essence of her memories. Determined to save Windsor Orphanage, Melissa decided to rally the community. She began reaching out to former residents and allies, hoping to ignite a fire of resistance against Nathaniel. She spent hours on her laptop, crafting social media posts and emails, stirring up enthusiasm. Her determination was unwavering, but shadows of doubt crept in. Would they stand by her? Would they care enough to fight for a place that was nothing more than a fading photograph in their minds? As the days unfolded, the response was overwhelming. People began to share their stories, of laughter, of tears, of the sense of family they'd found within those walls. Melissa organized a town meeting in the local community center, determined to spark a movement. The room was buzzing with energy as she spoke of memories and the importance of preserving the orphanage. Yet, just as she began to feel the tide turning in her favor, Nathaniel Blake walked in, sharp-suited and smirking, casting a shadow over her efforts. "Melissa," he called out, his voice dripping with condescension. "What a quaint little gathering you have here, but I'd hate for you to waste your time on a lost cause." The room fell silent. Melissa straightened her back, refusing to show any sign of weakness in front of the man she despised. "This orphanage is not a lost cause, Nathaniel. It's a part of our history, and we won't let you erase it." Nathaniel's laugh echoed through the hall, a sound that sent shivers down Melissa's spine. "Oh, but my dear, it's not just about erasing history. It's about progress. The city needs revitalization, and this dilapidated structure is standing in the way. Think of the jobs it could create, the new businesses, jobs built on the ruins of our past." Melissa shot back, her voice rising. "You want to profit from our memories, all for your own gain. This isn't about revitalization. It's about greed." The tension in the room escalated. The townsfolk looked between Melissa and Nathaniel, their expressions mixed with curiosity and concern. Melissa could feel their support wavering as they witnessed the confrontation. Nathaniel, sensing the shift, leaned in closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "You and I both know it's a lost battle, Melissa. You don't have the resources to fight me. I'll win this, and you'll be just another sad story of someone who tried and failed." A flicker of fear ignited in Melissa's chest, but she quickly extinguished it. "Perhaps," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt, "but I refuse to let you dictate what happens to my childhood home without a fight." With that, Nathaniel turned, sweeping out of the room with an air of finality, leaving a trail of anxious murmurs in his wake. Melissa took a deep breath, steeling herself. She couldn't afford to back down now. She had ignited a spark, and it needed to grow into a flame. In the following weeks, Melissa worked tirelessly to gather support. She met with local historians, uncovering documents and photographs that illustrated the orphanage's importance and its role in the community. People began to rally around her cause, signing petitions and sharing their own connections to Windsor Orphanage. Each story added a new layer to her determination, stoking the fire within her. But Nathaniel Blake was relentless. He began to employ underhanded tactics, trying to intimidate those who stood with her. Rumor had it he went to the homes of former residents, offering them money to stay silent, to turn their backs on Melissa's efforts. She heard whispers of people being approached, their loyalties tested by his persuasive charm. Fear gnawed at her resolve. How could she stand against someone willing to manipulate the very fabric of their community? One evening, as Melissa sat in her dimly lit living room, poring over old photographs, her phone rang. It was Clara, a childhood friend and fellow resident of Windsor. "Melissa, you need to come down to the orphanage. Now." Alarmed, Melissa grabbed her jacket and rushed out the door, her heart pounding. When she arrived, Clara was waiting outside, her expression fraught with urgency. "I found something," she said, leading Melissa inside. Inside the orphanage, Clara guided Melissa to the attic, a place long untouched by time. They clambered up the rickety stairs, the air thick with dust and memories. In the corner, hidden beneath a pile of forgotten toys, was a box. With trembling hands, Clara opened it, revealing a trove of documents, letters, and photographs that appeared to have been hidden for decades. Melissa's eyes widened as she sifted through the contents. "This is incredible. These could prove the orphanage's significance." A sense of hope surged within her. Yet, as she continued to dig through the paperwork, her heart dropped. Amongst the papers was a letter from the city council, discussing plans for the land. Plans initiated by none other than Nathaniel Blake himself. "The plans date back years," Clara murmured in disbelief. "He's been scheming to take this place for a long time." Melissa felt a mixture of anger and fear. Nathaniel Blake was not merely a businessman. He was a manipulator with a long-standing agenda. The stakes had risen again, and they were now facing a threat that extended far beyond the orphanage itself. They needed to act quickly, to expose Nathaniel's true intentions before it was too late. "Clara, we have to show this to the community," Melissa declared, her voice steely with determination. "We have a chance to turn the tide. They need to see who they're really dealing with." As they made plans to gather evidence and rally the community once more, the enormous weight of their task began to settle on Melissa's shoulders. With Nathaniel's ruthless ambition looming over them, the fight for Windsor Orphanage had become a battle for their future, and Melissa would not let the past slip away again. As dusk settled over the town, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Melissa Johnson stood before the crumbling facade of the Windsor Orphanage, her heart pounding. Nathaniel Parker had been relentless in his pursuit of the property, but she had gathered enough evidence of the neglect and mismanagement to finally confront him. The community was rallying behind her, armed with testimonies and photographs of the orphanage's dire state. Melissa felt both exhilarated and terrified. The outcome of this confrontation would define not just her future, but the future of those who had once called this place home. With her supporters gathered around her, Melissa took a deep breath and stepped into the meeting hall where Nathaniel awaited. The moment she entered, Nathaniel's dark eyes locked onto hers, filled with a mixture of irritation and condescension. He stood at the head of the table, flanked by his lawyers. "I'd like to say it's good to see you, Melissa, but we both know you're wasting your time," he drawled, smirking. Melissa clenched her fists, refusing to back down. "I'm not here to waste anyone's time, Nathaniel. I'm here to save the Windsor Orphanage. You have no right to bulldoze over our memories, over lives." "Memories?" Nathaniel laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "This place is a shell of its former self, Melissa. I can revitalize it and turn it into something that actually serves the community, like luxury condos. You've lived in nostalgia for too long. The tension in the room crackled, and Melissa felt the support of her friends behind her. You've taken from this community long enough, Nathaniel. You think money solves everything, but it doesn't bring back hope. It doesn't preserve our past. And what do you propose to do? He challenged, tilting his head. Gather a few old friends and reminisce? That's not how progress works. I can offer something tangible. Melissa's heart raced as she recalled the faded memories of laughter, love, and care that had once filled this orphanage. This place needs preservation, not destruction. I have evidence of the neglect, the safety violations. You've made promises you can't keep. With a swift motion, she unveiled the documentation she had painstakingly collected over the previous weeks. Photographs of peeling paint, flickering lights, and leaking roofs paired with the testimonies of former residents who had faced neglect at the hands of the current management. Look at what you want to demolish. Look at what you want to erase, she asserted, her voice steady. Nathaniel's expression faltered, his bravado dimming as he scanned the evidence. Is this the best you can do, Melissa? He snapped, his voice a mixture of anger and disbelief. You think a little paperwork will stop me? It's not just paperwork. It's the truth, Melissa replied, her voice rising with passion. And I'm not alone. The community stands with me, and they're willing to fight. The murmurs of support rippled through the crowd, the unity empowering Melissa. She continued, We've reached out to the media, and they're ready to cover our story. Your plan will not go unnoticed, Nathaniel. The room fell unervingly silent as Nathaniel weighed his options, anger flaring behind his eyes. His hand gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. You think you can intimidate me with threats? This has always been about money, and I have more than you could ever dream of. Melissa took a step forward, her heart racing. This isn't about money, not for me, not for us. This is about preserving the legacy of our childhoods. You may have money, but we have something far more powerful. The truth. A tense silence enveloped the room as Nathaniel took a moment to collect himself. He rose slowly, a smirk now faint. You've got spirit. I'll give you that. But it doesn't change the fact that I hold the deeds, and I won't give them up. Easily. That's when Melissa saw it, the cracks in Nathaniel's facade. The uncertainty. She seized the moment. What if we bring this to court? The community, the media, the overwhelming evidence. I'm ready to fight you for every inch of this place. Do you really think you can afford that? You have no funds to match my resources. Nathaniel countered, his confidence wavering. Melissa smiled, the glint of determination igniting in her eyes. That's where you're wrong. I may not have money, but I have something you can't buy. I have support, and I have worked hard to connect with people who share our vision. I've already received pledges to fund this fight if necessary. Nathaniel's bravado crumbled further, and in that fragile moment, Melissa knew she had him cornered. You can either walk away now or let this escalate. In the end, it will be the community that decides what happens here. And I promise you, they will remember who cared. The room buzzed with murmurs, the tide of support decisively shifting. Nathaniel, visibly agitated, turned away, his confidence shattered. Fine. You win this time, but consider this a warning, Melissa. I'll be watching. As he stormed out, the air released a heavy tension that had gripped the room. Melissa felt the weight lift, replaced by exhilaration and disbelief. The community erupted in cheers, their belief in her igniting a fervor of hope. In the immediate hours following the confrontation, Melissa and her supporters celebrated their victory. They gathered at a local cafe, sharing stories and laughter, honoring the past while embracing the promise of a future that included Windsor Orphanage. The atmosphere thick with camaraderie, it felt as if they had not only won a battle but had also begun to reclaim their sense of home. In the months that followed, Melissa harnessed the community's energy to form a committee dedicated to the preservation of the orphanage. They organized events, raised funds, and reached out to local businesses for support. With every effort, they repaired the structure, turning it into a community center that hosted art shows and workshops, transforming the orphanage's legacy into something vibrant and alive. Years later, as Melissa walked through the revitalized Windsor Orphanage, she marveled at the progress they had made. Children played in gardens filled with blossoms, laughter echoed through the halls, and the spirit of the past coursed through the air. The journey had not been effortless, but every pain had been worth it. And in reclaiming the orphanage, Melissa had also reclaimed her own sense of belonging. Nathaniel would remain a distant memory, but the impact of his defeat lingered on, reminding her that true wealth wasn't counted in dollars, but in the connections formed, the lives touched, and the nostalgia that blossomed into hope.